Hi there. There seem to be a lot more people I've noticed in forums and online who seem to obsess over pens, and maybe it's an item for everyday carry kit, maybe it's just an item for work, but there are a lot of forums talking about pens that you can carry. What ink should you put in them? Should you favor, rollerball pens, fountain pens, old traditional fountain pens, ballpoint pens, gel pens? So I was not really into pens very much until I started working kind of in a nicer office environment, and I wanted something besides the mass market plastic pens that you can buy. Now, that's not to say that a lot of those pens aren't good writers. Both Pentel and Pilot and Zebra make good mass market pens that write just fine, but they don't tend to look very, very professional, and I wanted something that didn't cost too much but looked a little more professional. And what I found after not looking for too long was Parker Jotter was a great option. Full stainless steel Parker Jotter, like this one, has great balance to it. It has very beautiful lines. It just looks nice. This can be had for about $18 to $20 range, $15 range maybe, if you look around. And it's a nice pen. It's got great plunging action to it. It's very solid, stainless steel, and inexpensive. So I think a lot of people have picked these up, and the next thing they start talking about is what do you put in it. So I realized that I had what may be the top three competitors for an ink refill to go in any Parker ballpoint style pen, any pen that actually accepts the Parker style refill, which is in the industry, I guess, known as the G2 style refill. It's not to be confused with a Pilot G2 gel pen. But this is a very standard style ink ballpoint refill, and so it does actually fit in a lot of pens. And there's a lot of talk about what refills you should get, and especially when it comes to EDC or everyday carry kit. And a lot of people talk about the Fisher Space Pen. I have one of those here. So the three that I have are the ink refill that will come in a Parker Jotter pen. It is the Parker's own Quinkflow ballpoint refill, and this is the medium point in black. And these are typically going to be made in France or India, for what that is worth. This one is the Schmidt EasyFlow 9000, also medium point in black, and these are made in Germany. They're all made in Germany. If you start, searching online for refills, Parker style refills, you're going to hear a lot of talk about the Schmidt EasyFlow 9000, and you're going to hear a lot of talk about this one. This is the Fisher Space Pen. It has a pressurized cartridge. It's also a medium point in black. The Space Pen has its own advantages, but I'll talk about all three of them. So let's begin with the Parker refill. Now, the Quinkflow refill was Parker's attempt to improve its original ballpoint refill. According to descriptions, the Quinkflow is a hybrid ink. It's smoother, and it writes a denser line than their original. Now, I never used their original ballpoint refill because I didn't have a Parker pen that long ago. But the Quinkflow has been around for a while, and if you write with it here, you'll see that it does write pretty easily, and it gives a nice black line. It's always difficult to tell what these lines really look like when you're watching a video, so this may not be too helpful, but you don't have to put too much pressure. It writes pretty easily, and it writes pretty nicely. Now, the advantage of the Parker is that it's available basically at any office supply store. Staples, Office Depot. You're going to be able to pick up a Parker refill. You're not going to have to search online. You're not going to have to order it in the mail. You need a refill, you're going to be able to go down to the store and get one. And pretty inexpensive. I'd say $3 or $4 range, maybe $5 range for one of these, and they last a good long time. So if you're satisfied with that, this may be the way to go. Let's take a look at the other one. I'll keep this in here actually. This is the one I'm currently using at work, the Schmidt EasyFlow 9000. It's become very popular and the reason people like it is because it also has a hybrid ink, but it's described as being somewhere in between a rollerball and a traditional ballpoint. Now, the actual nib of the pen is a traditional ballpoint, but the ink is supposed to be more like rollerball ink. Rollerball pens, for those who don't know, are those pens that are usually capped. They're very rarely clicky retractable pens, and they have kind of just a very fine, thin, felt or a little nib that looks just like a little pin, and there's no ball inside. Actually, don't quote me on that, I may be wrong. But the roller balls have a dark, opaque, rich line, much more like a gel ink, and so a lot of people like them. But if you're looking for something that can go in your Parker style compatible pen, you're not going to be able to find, I don't think, a true rollerball refill, but you will be able to find this. It gives a nice bold line. It's very dark, and it draws very easily. You don't need to add much pressure to the pen. No pressure really do you need to put on the pen for the ink to flow. So it's called EasyFlow for a reason, and it writes really nicely. You see, I'm really putting no pressure on the end of the pen here, and the ink just flows out, and it gives a nice dark line. I hesitate to do a side-by-side comparison because it may be basically worthless on the video, but these 3 slashes with the Schmidt, 3 slashes with the Parker, and for what it's worth, you can have a look at it. But the point is, the Schmidt does write a little easier and just a little darker and richer, even than the new Quinkflow ballpoint refill by Parker. So these come highly recommended. What are the downsides? Well, it's no guarantee that you're going to find these in your local office supply store. So you may need to pick one up on Amazon or Lanier Pens, which seems to me to be the only American outlet for these refills. If you buy from Amazon, they come through Lanier Pens. So you might need to get one online, might need to order it in the mail. It might not be at your local office supply store. The other downside may be that if you prefer a fine point pen to a medium point pen, you're out of luck. I have searched the World Wide Web, and it does not appear to me that the Schmidt EasyFlow 9000 comes in a fine point. If I'm wrong, I would love to see a link in the comments, because I would actually prefer a fine point myself. So that's the only reason that I'm not certain about sticking with the Schmidt EasyFlow, which is too bad. I really wish they made it in a fine point, and I don't think they do. I haven't found one. And then finally, we have the Fisher Space Pen, called the Space Pen because it was designed by Mr. Fisher for use in space. It was not designed by NASA in-house. NASA did not spend any money on the research and development for it. That was all private money spent by Mr. Fisher in research and development, but they needed a pen that could write in space. Why didn't they use a pencil? Pencil is actually a really bad idea. It gets wood shavings and lead flecks that float all over the cabin, and they're also flammable. So we can move past that now. You needed one of these. Needed a space pen. Why would you use one here on Earth? Well, they are extremely reliable. The Fisher Space Pen will write in basically any conditions that you might find yourself in. It can write, so it boasts, in negative 30-degree Fahrenheit weather up to 250-degree weather. I don't think you'll probably be in any of those conditions yourself. It can write upside down, of course. It can write in zero gravity, which is the real point of it. It can write underwater. It will lay ink down over greasy surfaces. Basically, it can write anytime, anywhere. But how does it write? Well, it's not bad. However, it does require you to put a little more pressure on the pen to get a good line than with either of the other two. Some people think it writes like junk. Personally, I don't. All three of these choices are fine writers, and in any home or office environment, they should get you by just fine. However, the lines on this do show a little more of the traditional ballpoint striping, I guess, where the lines aren't quite even and aren't quite as opaque all the way through and quite as bold and dark. And as I just said, it does take a little more pressure on the pen if you really want a good line. If you just write lightly, there's not much ink flow, so you do have to push down on it, which leads some people to choose something else. Also, They're not expensive, but they're about $6 or $6.50 dollars per cartridge. However, they will last a very long time, so they're actually a good value. Supposedly they'll last about 3 times as long as a typical ink refill, even though they appear to be smaller, but that's because the cartridge is pressurized, which is also, of course, what allows them to write in space, underwater, and in extreme temperatures. So, what's the bottom line? Well, I would say this. If you're in a home or office environment, my recommendation would probably be either the Parker Quinkflow refill or the Schmidt EasyFlow 9000 refill. If you want something that is readily available and a little less expensive, go with the Parker Quinkflow refill. You'll find it writes just fine. There should be no problems. I have no real complaints against it at all. However, if you want something that's a little nicer, that does write a little easier and a little darker, has more of a gel pen feel to it, even though it's a ballpoint, yeah, go with the EasyFlow 9000. It's a great writer. It will be a bit of a bold line, so if you like fine writing, a fine, nice thin line, then go with one of the other two. They come in fine. This one only comes in medium and bold. However, if you are in the field, that is, if you're in an environment where either you're outdoors, you're in unpredictable conditions, you are in cold weather conditions like ski patrol, or if you're, a lot of law enforcement, firefighters, snow patrol. If you're outdoors, if it's dusty, mechanics, if you're in a dusty environment, greasy environment, very hot, very cold, outdoors, maybe you're going to have to be writing up against a wall a lot for some reason, then get the Fisher Space Pen. It's always reliable. It's always going to be able to write no matter what you throw at it. Or if you fly a lot and you're worried about cabin pressure and pen leaks, you know the old pen exploding in your pocket, yeah, stick with the Fisher. It'll be fine in airplanes. But for home or office environment, probably Parker or Schmidt, with the slight preference, I'd say, going to Schmidt. I will put links to the 3 of these in the video notes. I hope that was useful for you. If you have anything to add, please leave a comment.